Hello, my name is Shane A. Bassett, the movie analyst, and I'm here today speaking with a writer, director, someone who does just about everything. And this movie has taken about 6 years to get to the big screen, and we're going to talk all about it. Ronnie S. Riskalla. Oh, I did get your name wrong in the end. Good morning.
Good morning, Shane. How you going?
Very well. We were just talking off air about how perfect I got your name, but then I ended up screwing it up.
Yeah, I
Sorry
know.
about
How weird. But once you press that record button, everything changes, I think.
Exactly, exactly. Well, first of all, I've got to say, what does the S stand for in your name?
Oh, it's just my dad's name and also my grandfather's name. So it's just to break up the Ronnie Riscala, so it doesn't sound like too many R's, when you roll it off the tongue. So I thought
Yeah,
better stage name like Samuel L. Jackson. It sort of like sounds a little bit better. So yeah,
yeah.
so I sort of stuck with that very early on in my career, and I just thought I've always hated that my name started with the same letter, my first name and my last name. So I had to break it up. That's basically it.
Yeah, I'm the same. Shane A. Bassett. I've always used my middle initial for when I started getting published because there was other Shane Bassetts around. So there you
Yeah,
go.
true. That makes sense.
Now, right at the beginning of your movie, Streets of Color, I noticed some graffiti saying Streets of Color. Was that already there or maybe made for the film?
It was made for the film. Luckily enough, the building was abandoned for a very long time. So it's like an iconic building. Funnily enough, I actually had many X-rays and MRIs done in that building because it used to be like a medical sort of clinic. So
Wow.
I got the idea one day, thinking, oh, wouldn't it be really cool to get somebody to graffiti the name of the film because it's based in the same area of Mount Druitt on the actual building. I never actually thought we'd get permission to do it, but after lots of phone calls and emails and getting through to the actual owner who just sat on the building for many years, was just sitting there doing nothing. They go, yeah, we don't care, just go for it. So we ended up, getting a graffiti artist who did everything for us, and yeah,
Right.
it became iconic for a little while until actually they knocked the building down finally.
Oh, right. So
Yeah,
you were sort of like you made use of it at the very last stages before it disappeared.
yeah, it would have been good if it was actually still there whilst the film was in the theatrical release.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it was probably about a year too late. So yeah, everyone was asking, "Oh, is the building still there?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, it's not, unfortunately." So
It was filmed out in the Golden West. You mentioned Mount Druitt and you mentioned permits. That was something I was going to ask. So in the credits, it does say thank you to the council. I'm assuming everything was all permitted. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it looked very authentic streets, locations.
yeah, everything was above board. I mean, everything we had to get permission and permits, and everything was paid for. So it wasn't your typical indie guerrilla filmmaking where we just took our cameras and just filmed
Well,
wherever
that
we.
was my question. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that in the past. Obviously, when you make short films and all that sort of thing, you don't have money, and sometimes you just don't get permission depending on whatever the situation is. I mean, I did get permission to shoot everywhere I wanted except for one location where I
Right.
actually had to speak to like the area command police, oh, whatever he's called, area command. I think his his title is, and he didn't want me to shoot at a particular set of shops because it was very troubled, and
Right.
they thought recreating some of the scenes that we were going to do, which were very confronting as you've seen in the film, they thought it might actually bring up some past trauma for a lot of people in the area. So I wasn't allowed to shoot at those particular shops, which was my vision, obviously, as a director, to have it at those shops. It was particularly specifically written for those shops. But yeah, after having a really in-depth conversation on the phone with this area command officer, I understood where he was coming from, and it was for the best.
During the period of filming, out and about in Mount Druitt, did you have anyone that wasn't associated with the movie, like try and jump into scenes or be on set, or did you have like security around stopping the locals?
No, I think everything went really well. Actually,
Okay.
we were welcomed by the people around in the areas, and a lot of them gave us their houses and their
Okay.
front yards, which you see in the film. So
Yeah.
uh, people were very encouraging. I mean, you had some young kids trying to run amok on set and trying to ride their bikes and do all that sort of stuff. But overall, we didn't have any trouble. People just think, oh, you need security. And I actually did, coming from the area, I thought maybe some particular areas you might need some security, but overall, no, we didn't have any security whatsoever.
So you're originally from the Mount Druitt, is it Penrith area?
Mount Penrith these days, but yeah,
Yeah.
originally from the Mount Druitt area. And before that was actually I grew up in the inner west a while back, but yeah, there was a bit of a time where my parents sort of split up, and
Okay.
so everyone had to go their separate ways, and I ended up in the west, which is why I'm telling this story now. So yeah,
The Golden West.
the Golden West, is that?
That's what I've heard it called. I'm from the Central Coast,
Right.
so well, it's where I'm based, and I mean I spend a lot of time in Sydney due to my work.
Right.
But I got to say that Umina, a place on the Central Coast, has always been known by locals as Mount Druitt by the sea.
Amazing, because yeah, it's actually nice. The beach there is quite good. I've been there a few times, so.
There you go. See, Mount Druitt person's been to Mount Druitt by the sea.
I actually didn't know that it was, that I didn't notice any sort of like dodgy characters or anything when I've been there with the family. So
Good. That's good to hear.
probably a different level of what you're talking about, because like in the film we talk about, there's bogans and drug dealers everywhere. You got your drug dealers
Yeah.
by the beach, and you have your drug dealers out in the Golden West, as you put it. So it's a different level, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. Rewatch value of your movie. I mean, it's a rough movie to watch. As you say, it's got some tough situations in it.
Yeah.
Well done for making the issues come to light, because a lot of movies do hold back.
Yeah, look, I think it was very hard writing this film because it comes from personal experience. It was going to be, very hard to be vulnerable and to sort of put not just myself, but all the experiences of my friends and family and everyone else that I grew up around, to put it up on screen and not hold back and be confronting and say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about racism. Let's talk about cultural identity and, kids from immigrant families trying to assimilate in a country where they're told, or sometimes, you come as a refugee, or like myself, you're born here, but then you don't feel like you belong. So
Right.
I thought it's been covered in other films and TV shows on a very sort of base level, but I wanted to go and take it to that next level and actually really talk about it and show what sort of issues it may cause.
Yeah, no, well done. I mean, how
Thanks.
often did the script change from that 6 years is that how long it took from the page to screen, or was it a
Close.
longer
It's
journey?
actually 7 years plus now. So
Wow.
it took me a good 3 years writing the screenplay, but that was part time because I was working full time
Yeah.
and working for a film company, which I had to work graveyard shifts, like 12-hour shifts. So there was not much left in each day after you've done a 12-hour shift, and
Yeah.
you're traveling about 90 minutes each direction, and then there's not much left for sleep. But I still crammed in like half an hour a day to write the screenplay. But yeah, it took a good 3 years. In terms of how much it changed, I always knew sort of the story I was going to tell, but it never was going to have like a really strong sort of spiritual nature to it.
Right.
Um, that's the part that changed them. That's the part that surprised myself. I mean, even I come from a strong sort of spiritual background because of the way my parents were, or my mum raised me, really.
Yeah.
That it was always going to be this like gangster story that was going to talk about the hood, the characters and the racism and the cultural identity. But then all this other stuff crept in, and I just thought I'm going to go with it because it was quite organic, the writing process. So I just went with it. And I was like, this character, which is the mentor character, Alexander, kept popping into the story, and I was like, well, those characters are sort of based on the neighbors that I had that would actually help me, especially around the Gulf War, where a lot of like little Arab kids would get attacked, or we would get vilified because of what was happening over in Iraq, and America
Yeah.
was invading and all that sort of stuff. And I always had these really great Anglo-Saxon neighbors that would come up and say, hey, if anyone's bothering you, let me know. And they would always look after us, and they were always those people who didn't see race, didn't see color. And I had to represent those people who I grew up with to show that the racism wasn't always the way it's portrayed in Australian film. I wanted to make it different.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, if you're writing what you know and you're using experiences from yourself, maybe, and family or friends, it's tough, but it's an actual thing that does happen, and it's still happening, obviously.
That's right.
Brothers, family, race, employment. unemployment all gets brought up in this story. It dodges all over the place, but the core characters remain the same. There's big hearts in there.
Yeah, I always wanted to tell a really emotional story, and yeah, like you said, it does cover a lot of topics. I mean,
Mm.
I dare say that I was trying to be a little bit too ambitious with trying to talk about like racism and loss, you know,
Yeah,
because
right.
you know the loss of a friend and family, and like I said, I was saying earlier, assimilation and cultural identity, um, and there's the core story of addiction too. You know what I mean? So there's a
Oh
lot
yeah.
out there, but I find that growing up in a lot of those multicultural areas, there are a lot of those social issues that we need to discuss, and it's never just one thing. It's not just racism. It's not just drug addiction. It's almost a little bit of everything. And I just thought, why don't I try to incorporate all those elements and try to tell a story? I did have a 2 hour version, so if some people feel like it's rushed, there's a reason for that. It's because
Mm.
distributors and platforms now want films that are shorter in time. So I feel like my 2 hour version really fleshed it out a little bit nicer and at a better pace. But the one that I had to release theatrically and online was about 20 minutes shorter. So it does feel, for me, it does feel a bit rushed to have all those topics within an hour and 42 minutes, as opposed to that extra 20 minutes, which gives you a little bit more breathing space.
Yeah, so you were dictated almost like by producers or people who were funding it because of the length. You didn't have final cut. I know many directors don't, but were anything that you pushed back into the film that they might have wanted out?
No, there wasn't anyone particularly saying, "Hey, you got to take this out." It was more like, "You've just got to shorten the film." I wasn't told what to take out and what not to take out. So,
Sure. Okay.
regardless on both cuts, I had final cuts. So I left in
Good.
what I wanted to leave in, regardless. It was more from a business point of view where, you know, yeah, like I was saying earlier, you just have to have a shorter film because that's what the industry wants. That's what the platforms want. And if you don't have that, then you don't get your film sort of released. And, you know, especially when you're doing theatrical release and you're doing Q&As, you've got to allow for
Mm.
that 20 minutes to half an hour to do that time. And people can't come out, have dinner, watch a film, then stay for a Q&A. You're looking at a 3 to 4 hour sort of experience there. And not many people can do that if they've got kids and they've got to get babysitters and all that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I see 9, 10 movies a week, and there's a lot more longer movies sneaking in. But
yeah.
unless you're Martin Scorsese, maybe that's the only time you can just make a movie as long as you want, obviously.
I agree. Totally true there.
Was there any higher power in during the production? Did you notice anything weird happen? Because part of the story is about a higher power, and that gets incorporated into the script. Did you notice anything weird or
Oh, yeah.
a
Well,
presence?
it's a great question. Yes. Whilst I was writing the script, this is one of the first things that happened to me, and I felt like it was part of me meaning to tell that I was meant to tell this story.
Yeah.
So in the story, the main character Tez has a ringing in his ears, and that was born out of the fact I was just writing the script. I'd never heard about anyone having any sort of affiliation with ringing of the ears, and if it meant anything more than just something in your ears, right?
Mm.
Or maybe a medical condition or whatnot. So I was writing the script and I kept getting this ringing in my ears, particularly, I think it was in my left at some point. It was more in the left and sometimes in the right.
So just in one ear, or it traveled over?
It
Okay.
traveled over, but it was always maybe I think it was always in my left ear, and but then it would travel into the right ear, not at the same time. It would be different moments. And the first time I sort of took notice of it was I was doing a bit of writing on the screenplay, and it went I had one of those ringing ears which went for quite a long time. It was maybe like 10, 15 seconds. Usually they're about 5 seconds or less.
Okay.
Um, and I think I was on my break at work and I was working the graveyard shift. It would have been maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Mm.
And that's usually when we have our like what we call our like dinner break, if you like. And that morning I drove home at 7. I think I finished at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I had a bit of a car accident actually. It was well,
Oh,
nothing terrible, but yeah,
okay.
something happened on the road, and I ended up with a car that was not working, and I was actually facing a very main road, Cumberland Highway in Sydney, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning, so peak hour traffic. What had happened
Mm.
was my car, basically, apparently I hit some oil on the ground. Earlier that morning, there had been an accident. So
I
when
see.
I went around the corner, I was turning left from another road. My car spun 180 degrees, and I was facing oncoming traffic on what you call a really busy road. But it sort of landed right up against the curb, so it was almost like off the road. And so the cars that were coming directly towards me were able to get around me.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Anyways, that's where the story sort of starts, and I don't want to digress too much, but later on, I went back to writing my script, and the ringing of the ears thing happened again, and I was just like, what is this thing that keeps happening to me? So long story short, ended up having conversations with a whole bunch of people, and I was told that people believe that it's a frequency that angels use to communicate with people. So that I went into a rabbit hole onto YouTube, onto Google, and I found out that that's what people actually believe. And I found out that my mother-in-law actually believed that too. And that was the first time I actually heard it. It was actually my mother-in-law that sent me down the rabbit hole. I was like, okay, that's
Fantastic.
interesting. So anyways, so I'm continuing to write the screenplay over these couple of years. And I would go to type the words. I was like, I'm going to put this in the script. I'm going to put this like where the main character gets these little signals, and he's got a mentor character, and it's all sort of coming together. And I typed the words. Tez gets a ringing in his ears, and no joke, no word of a lie, my ears would ring instantly when I typed those words.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just thought that was absolutely bizarre. And then I would tell my producer Yolandi about this, and then all of a sudden her ears would start to ring at different moments too. I don't know if it's a power of suggestion, because that can sometimes happen, but those things would happen. And the other thing, not to bore you too much with the same topic, but in the script it says a gust of wind happens when Tez comes out and this feather lands on his hand. So on the day, it was just there was no wind whatsoever. We go to start shooting, and this massive gust of wind happens, and it helps the feather land on his hand, and it flies away nicely too. So there's all these little moments that sort of happen where even the cinematographer, who doesn't have any religious beliefs at all, because it happened multiple times with the wind, he looked over at me and he said, I think something weird's happening with your film. I don't know what it quite is, but yeah, there's something very strange with your film. I said, okay, there you go. Maybe there's something to it.
Definitely wasn't a response I was expecting. I thought maybe a few little things might have moved or something, but that is incredible.
I could go on about this sort of stuff, but yeah, there was a lot of sort of what I call magical elements that happened in this film, and it was sort of meant to be.
Well, someone was watching over you, obviously, I would say, in this instance.
Yes, most definitely. I think I was meant to tell this story.
Yeah, I'd say so. When it came to the casting, is it just me, or I know you had to probably hire or audition some of the leads, but were there a lot of authentic or locals involved? I mean, there was some pretty, how can I say it, gritty acting, people just going all out, not worrying about their self-being or the way they looked.
Casting took me a good 12 months. We didn't have any casting agents or casting directors helping us because of, being an indie film and not having sort of the funds required to sort of tap into that sort of thing, I guess. But yeah, I basically cast from casting networks and websites that, have actors databases and that sort of stuff. But in terms of your question, were there anyone authentic? Yeah, there were a few. Some of the African actors were not actors. I had to sort of train them up and get them to sort of be actors, because it's really hard finding African Australian actors. There's not many around, and all the ones that you do have, they're all busy because they're all booked out because they're in high demand, for sort of stories like this. So yeah, but most of the actors that you do see are professional actors. They're just unknowns at this point, except apart from Rahel Romahn, which you probably know of. He's been in a fair bit of Australian film, and he played Mozart recently with Michael Sheen at the Sydney Opera House, and so he's from Western Sydney himself. He also experienced a lot of the same sort of stuff that I did, but he's about 15 years my junior. So right. Just to show that the racism and the cultural identity complex was generational as well. So every generation went through a different sort of racism. But yeah, a lot of the actors are professional actors and just haven't had their chance, and they went all out because it was so confronting, and I wanted them to dig deep and and go there.
Yeah, Rahel was a good choice, and you're right. I have seen him in other productions and television, Mr. In Between as well.
Yes,
Um, Only a couple of episodes from memory, but he made an impact there.
yeah, he
Uh,
was.
but he had a great connection with Veronica, who I had not seen before. I really like her, and I hope that she goes a long way too. How did you find Veronica?
Yeah, through one of the casting agents, actually.
Sure.
Sorry, not one of the casting websites. Sorry. She had actually done a short film with another director producer that I knew. So as I was searching through a database of so many girls, and I was looking for someone particular
Yeah.
who could really, give me some strong emotion, because she does go through a sickness and a romance and all that sort of stuff. So I needed somebody that was going to be able to deliver on the emotion. And I had hundreds and hundreds of girls submit applications, and it was down to like 3 girls, and Veronica was one of them. And at the time, she was, I think she was part of the Miss Universe for that year, and so she was quite busy, and I wasn't
Right.
able to really communicate quickly. But she put down some tapes, and we went back and forth, and we did a few more tapes, and she came in for a chemistry test, and we went through a rigorous process to make sure that she was the right actor for the job. And in the end, as you probably have seen, she delivered exceptionally, and she, well, once again, she was an unknown, and I think she's got a bright future.
Well, she's not only delivering for you, but she has to cross over so many different levels of emotion from living with her uncles that, really look after her, from getting this new romance to then struggling in accidents. So, yeah, I think she covered everything there and a very good find.
Yeah, she definitely did.
And I see you thanked Olga, also another actor that you used in the film. You thanked her in the credits. Another actor that I've noticed a few times in Australian productions. So you've got some really good credibility here. Obviously, you've got an eye for talent.
Oh, I would like to think so. I think acting is, for me, is one of the most important parts of making a film. Nothing worse than having unknown actors that don't have that much experience, because then you can't deliver the sort of story that I was trying to tell. And like you were saying earlier, it needs to be authentic and gritty. And having actors that can deliver that sort of really truthful performance, especially because they're playing such intense characters. These characters are people who have gone through a lot of social issues, and maybe some of these actors haven't gone through some of the same things that these characters were designed to go through. So it was really important to have somebody that could really go there.
Was there anyone at your Q&As that you've done multiple sessions of that didn't get it, that might have asked you a tricky question that made no sense and you had to like work around it? Or did everyone, that audiences have really taken to it and understood what you were the message you were getting at?
Interesting question. I actually thought that I might get a couple of those.
I thought you would, yeah.
No, I actually didn't get anything like that. It was actually really well received, I think, because it's so emotional. People just come out and they're crying, and that's all I kept getting told was, "Wow, that was so powerful. I was crying through the whole thing." And
That's a good sign, crying.
yeah, people were saying like it was thought provoking and powerful, and it was a roller coaster ride of emotions. And I designed it that way. I truly believe you have to walk out of a film experiencing something, whether it's joy or happiness or even anxiety. I think the directors, the job of a storyteller is to make sure that you evoke some sort of emotion, and that you walk away somewhat changed by the experience. Whether
Yep.
it's supposed to be a positive change or a negative change, that's up to the storyteller. But I believe that the film should be memorable in some way. It should sit with you even a few days afterwards. And that's what I was told. I was getting messages. I was flooded with messages after we had the big premiere over at North Sydney at the Orpheum. And
Yeah.
people were messaging me 2 or 3 days later saying, "I'm still thinking about your film." I'm not like, people would say things like, "I'm not a spiritual person. I'm not a religious person," but it spoke to me in some sort of way. I don't know what it is. And I said, "Well, just go with it, meditate on it and see where it takes you." But I'm glad to hear that. And, thank you so much for the positive reviews. I mean, there was one person I think that came up to me after one of the Q&As, and they said, I'm from the Blacktown area,
Right.
and I didn't experience anything like this. So I thought, I thought it wasn't very, very authentic. And I said to this person, I said, how old are you? And I think they were early 20s. I
Right.
said, well, I'm more than double your age. So I can safely say that this is actually based on my own experience and people that I grew up with, and it's quite authentic. So I'm glad that you didn't experience any of this stuff, but I surely did. And then I gave an example of my wife, who's about 8 years younger than I am, and she's from the Mount Druitt area too, and she also didn't experience any of the things that I experienced. I dare say she grew up on the right side of the tracks. So not
Yeah.
everyone was privy to the world that we all grew up in, but people knew of that world. So to say that you didn't experience that, I'm sure you you should be aware of it at least, you know.
I think it's like we mentioned earlier, it's by the beach, it's out in the Golden West, it's anywhere, anywhere.
Yeah,
It can
exactly.
happen, and then there's periods where it can be real bad and other periods where it's not so bad, but it's there.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't put up a sign saying based on true events or inspired by true events. I actually left that out because I wanted to use a little bit of creative license. You know, a director has that creative liberty to sort of put his little touch on it and a bit of give it a stylistic approach, because I
Of
feel like as
course.
a director, there's nothing worse than telling a true story or a story that's inspired by true events, and it's just really boring and slow. And we tend to get a lot of those stories that are slow paced and they don't go anywhere. So I want to amp it up, but everything in the film actually happens in those areas. It's not,
Mm.
it's all plausible, you know. Nothing's contrived. Nothing is there for no reason to make the film cool. Everything that's in the film actually does happen. So it may have not all happened to me, but and to the people I experienced or people I grew up with, but it does actually happen.
Do you think when it's released overseas for maybe a foreign audience, UK, US, wherever, they might need subtitles with some of the words that we say and what we're
Look, I
said?
tried to get away from that. I was actually pretty aware of that as well, because I know it's hard to sell Australian films overseas. So
Very much, yeah.
I was trying to get away with using too much slang, but then, you know, it would have taken the authenticity out as well for the Australian public.
There was still a lot there, though.
You know, it's funny because, you know, you write a screenplay and then by the time you actually finish it, shoot it, edit it, it's actually a lot different to what you envisioned in the first place, because in terms of dialogue anyways, because the actors come in and we do workshopping, and then they might add a few more swear words or a bit more slang
Okay.
to make it a bit more natural. So I dare say that I didn't write as many swear words in the film or slang words as much as what the actors brought in themselves.
Ah,
And
okay.
that's a great thing about having a collaborative director like myself. I like to make sure that my actors have enough freedom to bring in what they believe the character should be like as well. And you know, and if it isn't, you know, we just rein it back and we make sure that, you know, we stay on track.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
The peroxide hair, obviously, that became part of the story as well, in a way. That was obviously something that you wanted to do. That was a choice.
Yeah, it was a choice based on real life. Unfortunately, a lot of us growing up, we just wanted to be Anglo-Saxon. You know, because we were called all these nasty things all the time, and you know, because we were darker skinned and we had dark hair, and
Really?
um, it affected us a lot. You know, being
Yeah.
told, you know, we look like
I
monkeys.
just wouldn't have put that together, but now you've said it. Yeah, really, that the peroxide hair.
That's why it was important to tell the story in this way, to have the main character, you know, have dyed his hair, and he's got blue contacts as well. And so we wanted to assimilate that much, that we wanted to look alike. We wanted to look like everyone else. So that was really important to have that main character go through that cultural identity, that self-identity, that, you know, he wants to be like everyone else. He doesn't want to look like his own culture, and, you know, maybe that way he'll be accepted. But obviously in the story, because he goes through a journey, he understands that you know, I know it's cliche to say this, but you have to be yourself.
Yeah, it's cliche, but it's true. I mean,
It's
you
true.
can't get around it.
Yeah.
I also spotted that Al Pacino was on a t-shirt at one point. The
There's
Great Scarface.
Yeah, there's even a Scarface. If you look closely, when Tez does a lot of drugs in his little lounge room there on his coffee table, there's actually a picture of Scarface
Okay.
in the far background there. It wasn't very prominent, but we had it in there, like one of those little extra details. But obviously, you've noticed. Obviously, we're big fans of Al Pacino's work.
Of
Uh,
course.
I think Rahel is more than myself. I was lucky I got to see him come out. I think it was like 10 years ago. He did a talk on stage, and he did a little bit of a monologue as well. It was fantastic to see him live and hear from the man himself. But yeah, obviously these old school actors are the ones that that speak to us filmmakers, because of their truthful depiction of what they've done on screen and their legacy of work.
Yeah, no, you're right. What about awards? Now, at the time of recording this, the Australian Film Academy are now taking submissions and there's voting going on. Is that something, I mean, you've made some short films and you've been in the industry, so to speak, for quite some time. Is that something that's important to you, being recognized by peers?
I think it's always important to be recognized by your peers, but I don't think so much that awards gives you sort of that recognition. I think it's based on the level of success and the level of work that you can get. But today is when the voting actually closes for the actor award. So we're in consideration for many categories, from writing, directing, three of our supporting actors, our lead actor Rahel, and our musical score as well. So yeah, so I'm hoping that actor members do, or my peers do, vote for the film in the indie film categories, and maybe we do pick up some nominations and actually maybe win some awards as well. But yeah, it's always important, but it's not something that I believe I have to be able to move forward, because I'm always going to make films regardless.
Good. No, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, there's two things about filmmaking when it comes to indies. Generally, it's a passion project or it's a commercial, to a certain point. A lot of directors will do their passion projects to get a commercial project. Would you be willing to maybe not sell out, but move that next stage up when it comes to a bigger budget and more commercial film?
Oh, look, filmmaking is my passion since I was about 4 years old. Like, if you speak to my parents, I'll tell you that I was obsessed with the moving image. I used to record movies on a Betamax recorder, and I had hundreds of those tapes as I was growing up. So and then my dad was always into filming and that sort of stuff. So I'd use all his old bulky video. I'd had to carry this huge video recorder with this bulky video camera to record.
That's dedication.
And make short films. So I always knew that filmmaking is something that I wanted to do as a career. It wasn't just a passion. It wasn't just a hobby that I was doing on the side. I've always been in the film industry. I worked for Hoyt Cinemas as a projectionist and a technical manager for 20 years. I worked for film companies. Wow. There was never any backup. There was never go and do another job or whatever. So I've always been around film somehow.
Great.
So I would never sell out, but I'm a storyteller. So if the story appeals to me, I'll do it. And if sometimes you got to put bread and butter on the table. I've got 3 kids, so I've got to look after my family regardless. And if I can tell stories for a living, regardless of whatever it is, then I'm going to take the job. And of course, I want to be able to tell my own stories, but I'm there to tell other people's stories as well.
No, that's really good to hear. And working in cinemas, you see it firsthand what audiences are like, what they're responding to, and even the technical side, how things have changed over the years.
Oh yeah, I mean, like going from running 35mm projectors to digital cinema. I mean, from having a person running all these projectors to having no one running it, like it's running itself now. So that's how it became redundant, because a computer took my job twice. Actually, it's happened.
I'm not laughing at you, but it's
I know.
Crazy because AI and computers, it's just happening.
Yeah, it's definitely happening. I mean, yeah, I'm a very unique individual, that I was able to work behind the projector, but I also know how to write a film and get it all the way to theatrical release, and even the marketing and distribution side I've worked in a little bit as well. So having viewed so many films whilst I was projecting those films, and we sometimes have to check the film before it was projected to the public. So I got a chance to see a lot of films very early on as well. It gave me a lot of knowledge in terms of filmmaking. It gave me a lot of knowledge, and I've watched hundreds of trailers, so I know what trailers should.
Trailers are very important to
trailer. I mean, you can have a terrible film, but a trailer can sell that terrible film. You know what I mean? So so I was in a very, very lucky position to be all across film in many different ways.
Do you have a director's chair with your name on it?
Not yet. One day. I'm not that famous yet.
I did see that there was a family affair during the catering in the credits. So it was the caterers was all in house.
Oh, look, these films are always a family affair.
Family affairs. That's so good.
Yeah, my mum was cooking up some great food. She's a great cook, and my wife was helping, and a lot of my production team's family members were helping out too. So it was, yeah, it's the best way to make it cheaper as well, because a lot of these catering companies charge an arm and a leg to to cater a film. So we fed our cast and crew really well. I mean, it was you hear people getting noodles and Vegemite sandwiches, but we had really great lasagnas and all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
Fantastic. I should have had a set visit. Maybe I should.
You should have. You would have been fed really well.
Thank you. To wrap it up, I always like to ask this question of directors. Describe in your own words why people should watch this movie. Why? I mean, we've covered a lot of ground maybe already, but in your own words, in a nutshell, there's so many other movies to choose from when you're looking at digital platforms and so forth. Why should people watch Streets of Colour?
People should watch Streets of Colour if they really want a really great story told about certain areas in Sydney that you've never really experienced before. I mean, it's something that people have always come up to me and said, "Hey, I've never seen this part of Australia before. This is really cool."
Yep.
So I believe that people should come and see this story if they want to be moved. They want to be told a great story that's not boring. It's got a good pace, and it has not only Australiana through it, but it has an almost Hollywood edge to it as well, and it's exciting. It has a little bit of everything. It has a bit of action. It has a really cool story that you'll actually walk away remembering the story. Whereas most films that I believe these days, you walk away not even thinking about it twice. So Streets of Colour is a film that you will remember long after the credits have rolled.
You will, and I'll stand by what I said at the start. It's a tough watch. It's not that easy to get through at times.
Yeah, watch the trailer first, just in case you don't like that type of film.
True. Was it always called Streets of Colour, or did you have other titles in your repertoire?
Good question. It was actually called the famous suburb of the Mount Druitt area, which is 2770.
Yeah, okay.
2770, as a lot of the rappers like to call it. But it was starting to sound like a futuristic film. So I'd throw the title around, and people were like, "Is this set in the year 2770?" And I thought, yeah, that's going to be an issue. So before it actually got released, I changed it very quickly, because I thought, yeah, we better put a name that's going to stand out a little bit more. And I specifically chose Streets of Colour because it encapsulates a lot of the different colored skin types, the different languages, the different types of people, and the languages and everything. So I just thought it's a great name. Plus, it doesn't exist on IMDb anywhere. It was strategic.
Yeah. I don't like when movies have the same name. I don't like that when there's a movie that's just been released, but there's also one or two other movies previously with the same title.
Yeah, or maybe 10 different versions of a film that has that title. So I was very, like I said, very strategic in picking a name that doesn't exist on IMDb. We're the only Streets of Colour.
Yes, good. And it's a postcode that's very famous within the popular and well-regarded rugby league team, the Penrith Panthers, because a lot of the players started in Mount Druitt.
Yeah, a couple of the boys are from the Mount Druitt area too, so I think it's a film that I think will be a cult film if you give it time.
Yeah, I think so, mate, and good luck.
Thank you so much for having me.